Hi, this is Dick Morris. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the new book that my wife Eileen McGann and I have written called Catastrophe. It goes on sale this week on June 23rd, and really is, I think, if I may say so, the most important book that she and I have ever written. This is the first of a number of videos where I'll kind of summarize the general topics that we cover so that you can decide if you want to get it or not. The first chapter is called The War on Prosperity, and it basically says there's no more war on poverty. It's now flipped over and become Obama's war on prosperity. And we begin by talking about why his stimulus program won't work, that the model of Keynesian economics is fundamentally flawed, and we show how it hasn't worked in Japan, where they started with about a quarter of their gross domestic product earmarked for debt, and now the national debt is 2.5 times its gross domestic product, and there's been nothing to show for it. But then we get to the question behind that, which is, why is Obama doing this, even though it's obviously not going to work and going to saddle the country with a huge deficit? And the answer is that the spending is not a means to end the recession. The recession is a means to justify the spending. And we show how this spending really moves the United States from a predominantly free market country to one in which the government's share of the economy is so large that it essentially puts us in the same category with France and with Germany. And then we talk about the negative effects of what Obama is doing, the potential for inflation, the potential to raise such serious doubts about the dollar that it does permanent damage both to the economy and to our national standing, the potential, indeed the likelihood, that the higher interest rates that he'll have to pay to borrow the money to pay for the spending will vitiate the effect of the spending on the economy. And then, of course, the certainty that big tax increases are around the corner. Then we talk about what is Obama's core strategy here. And it is to have only the very rich pay taxes and have the vast majority eat the taxes, benefit from them, but not pay them, so that more and more of the tax revenue will be generated by the top 1 or 2 or 10 or 20% of the country, and that about 60% of the country will not only pay no taxes, it will make a net profit on its relationship with the IRS, so that essentially taxes are no longer going to be a political issue. That is the beginning of the class warfare that underscores Obama's approach. And we explain how this is essentially FDR's approach, that in his administration he began it saying, I'm for recovery, but then moved to being for class warfare, and that change was a dramatic one, which really is being mirrored in Obama's programs. And all of this is because of the European idea in Barack Obama's mind, an entirely different concept of how to run a country, of social goals, of ideals, that's based on what the Europeans think as opposed to what Americans think. And we sort of elaborate these ideas and give you a feeling for them. It's really the most comprehensive overview of what this guy's doing and why he's doing it. And then at the end of the chapter, we have a very lengthy action agenda which spells out precisely what each of us can do to stop this trend in the United States. And we name names of congressmen who are vulnerable. We talk about how to go against them. It's really very important. The next chapter relates to the bank bailout, and it makes the point that Obama's goal is to take in the finance industry, in the healthcare industry, in the mortgage industry, in the auto industry, and have 1 or 2 companies or banks or whatever that are controlled by the government and subsidized by the government, that then compete with the private sector firms and drive them out of business. That it's really a way and a door to socialism. And then in the next chapter we talk about the mortgage bailout, and we explain how this isn't going to help anybody because the rules that he's adopted are so difficult to qualify for relief, and that he knows that and why he's adopted that approach. In the next videos we'll talk about the other stuff in the book. In the next video we'll talk about the healthcare program and how he's destroying healthcare. The video after that we'll talk about his plan for political domination by muzzling talk radio and cooking the census and opening the borders. Then we'll talk about the war on terror, where he's basically surrendered his appointments to the Justice Department and, most importantly, the growth of Sharia law in the United States. And then in the next video, we'll talk about our section on Congress, where we have surprising new information about Charlie Rangel, Chris Dodd, Ted Kennedy Jr., and a host of other prominent officials of both parties. So the book's available. Go to dickmorris.com. You can order an autographed copy. I've signed 25,000 of them, and while they last, they're yours. And after that, I hope to see you as we continue these programs on Fox and these videos. Thanks a lot.